Thank you very much. That you totally struck. No, I'm struck too. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to do the keynote of that exhibition and of the programming, because I think it's not usual that a topic like ethics in that kind of technology is spoken about at the beginning of that event. Of course, I'm a hacker, so I'm very interested in the technology, but today I want to talk about some ethics. It so happens that some weeks ago, the first ethical approach was introduced, speaking about ethics in virtual realities and similar technologies. And so I present not only my own thoughts, but also the thoughts of Michael Madari and Thomas Metzinger, who researched at the university in Mainz, the Gutenberg University, and they wrote a paper and introduced an approach for some ethics for virtual reality and the like. So, I mean, it's virtual worlds, I called it, and immersive technologies. It's about thinking about the proper and improper use. I myself work not only for the Chaos Computer Club, but also in a group, in a research group for, I think, about 15 years now, who deals with ethics and technology of all kinds, because I'm a computer scientist and those questions are somewhat important to me. And so if I show some of the recommendations, you will, of course, see that those work for other technologies too. But I think for virtual reality, there are some specific recommendations which we might think about before it is brought to a large market worldwide. You know all that commercial stuff which was introduced in the last months. Especially people are talking about Oculus Rift, of course, about Sony, about Samsung, about HTC, which is mostly virtual reality headsets. And well, you don't have to be a wizard to know that there will be a large market, of course, where for educational purposes, gaming purposes, but also for medical purposes and stuff like that, those technologies will be introduced in the very near future. And so I think it's the right time to think about the ethics of those virtual environments. And I have an example right now, but I think most of the people will already know some parts of virtual reality or tried it out. I myself tried some of the headsets, of course, because in the hacker community, these headsets are very popular, not only to play with, but also to disassemble in a way. So unfortunately, my own brain is gets somewhat dizzy, so I have to get used to the technology. As I tried it out, I felt kind of nausea. But I guess that's just the beginning of the technology, and of course we all know how it ends because we all saw Star Trek and know the holodecks. Before I introduce those recommendations, there's some things to be said about the research, especially in neuroscience. Of course, there's not that much research right now about that, but it's an open field, I guess, and meaning, so what kind of influences are on the human brain if you use those kind of new virtual reality devices and stuff like that. And also behavioral research, speaking about measuring changes in empathy and stuff like that. But it's a new research field, but I don't want to talk about it that much. But I think if you want to think about the ethics, you should consider that there's not much research about influences on human brains. Of course, you know that there's a certain dynamic in the market. Of course, it is a multi-million-dollar market, and that's why I don't talk that much about creative stuff with VR technology, but mostly about commercial stuff, because we all know we live in capitalist society, and so the market will will change somewhat the use of the technology. Of course, the basic question for me is always, okay, will we live in an age of VR where we have more like creativity and fun stuff, or more like creepiness? And since the big global commercial players started to buy into that market, we have to think not about just gaming, but very much more about social interaction, about communication, about advertisement with those technologies, of course. I have one of the recommendations Madari and Metzinger made are made of 6 recommendations, but I added some when I thought about the ethics in VR. That is because I don't think that first ethical approach is fulfilling. It's merely to start a discussion about the ethics. I think it's not enough when you think about future technologies in VR. So first is of all ethic codes is serious harm, and of course experience using virtual reality should ensure that they do not cause lasting or serious harms to the subject. You would have that in all code of ethics for any technology, and so that is true for virtual reality too. So I can skip that. I guess that it would be quite clear. Second is, and that is a little more interesting for VR technologies, it is informed consent. Meaning that subjects should be informed about the lasting and serious behavioral effects resulting from virtual reality experiences, and that the extent of this behavioral influence might not be known. That is, of course, I mentioned it earlier, we don't have much research about influences for human brains, and so you should not only have that informed consent about known facts, but also that there might not be known. I think that it's quite important, but you could see those recommendations for other technologies too. I guess that's not specific for VR. There's a third recommendation which I find somewhat open to discussion. Metzinger and Madari say researchers and media outlets should avoid overhyping the benefits of virtual reality, especially when virtual reality is being discussed as a medical treatment. And that, I guess it refers to the media outlets, especially in the last year, where the educational and medical usement and medical treatments were a little bit overhyped. So that media discussion is a little bit interesting, but I don't think it is a core of ethics if you think about virtual reality devices, of course. But I didn't want to skip it because we know the usage of technology is shaped very much about, when it comes to media attention and how the media is writing about that stuff and what is hyped and what is not. And so I didn't want to skip it. I have some remarks to make about the acquisition of Facebook. You know that Facebook acquired Oculus Rift, which was a debate in the media, not only because they paid approximately $2 billion for that acquisition, but also because of the Kickstarter campaign, which started before. It was in August 2012, I guess. And the backers of that Kickstarter campaign were not everybody was happy about the acquisition, because they felt that they laid the ground, the monetary ground, for... Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Because they laid the monetary ground for an investment for a large commercial company, and well, and it was just the first investment round, of course. And the Kickstarter campaign, in fact, built the value for the later Facebook acquisition. But the strategy which Mark Zuckerberg in 2014 laid here, and I will quote, strategically, we want to start building the next major computing platform that will come after mobile. This acquisition is a long-term bet on the future of computing, shows how much commercial value Facebook put in that technology, and that it, of course, changed the debate from we will have especially gaming technology to we will have social interaction technology. And of course, we all know what the business case of Facebook is. It will also be strongly about advertisement. And not only advertisement, but also manipulation, because, well, you know who the customers of Facebook are. That is, of course, not the account users, but the advertising companies and the like. So, but that goes not only for the Oculus Rift headset, of course, but for other companies too. You could say that maybe for Sony or HTC or Samsung too. So that is not really new. And that is why, and I feel the approach, the recommendations from Madari and Metzinger very much refer to that shift in the commercial market. So if you read the recommendations, and I have the next recommendation from them following up, you see that they strive to minimize the risks that comes from being introduced in a very commercial market. And that, of course, the Facebook business model is advertisement and not creativity or something like that. But, well, it shifts the way technology and innovative ways to use it will be introduced into the market. So I have a little example because I wanted to point to a development which just happened in the last weeks or something, that you have more and more adding to the educational ideas for virtual reality. We have more and more shaping the market for kids. This is a Samsung presentation. That's actually the commercial presentation of that Samsung kids device and a virtual reality which should help the kids to slow down, to fall asleep and stuff like that. And you all know that virtual realities. I just want to have an example for me, a kind of new market where it is especially introduced for kids. And that meaning if it is a commercial market, you also have to think about questions of privacy, of course, the dignity of the children, and questions of manipulation. Because you maybe know, if you have such a VR headset, it's also possible to collect all kinds of data, meaning not only the data where you see communications pattern or interaction pattern, but also sensor data. It could also mean biometric data, because if you want to, you can build it into the headset and well, measure biometric data or collect it. And since you know, Facebook, especially Facebook, already does that for the normal Facebook advertising network. It's an exception for Europe. In Europe, the collection of biometric data is not, well, it is in the data policy, but it is not used, but it is used in the American market. So that wouldn't be a surprise if they also do it in the VR realm. It's quite long. It's something like 4 or 5 minutes. I just want to have an example that it's not only for grown-ups, but it's also a market for kids. And since we have, you know, the discussion about peeping Tom, Barbie dolls on playgrounds and stuff like that, so maybe we will have the discussion in the VR device technologies too, I guess so. I would just skip it. I don't think we need it anymore. If you think about the ethics, there should be some considerations about graphic content. You know, or upsetting content in any way. You know, we have that in the normal web space too. Maybe you remember the discussion that went on after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, where there were a lot of movies showing a policeman shut down. And we had a rather interesting, from an ethics standpoint, debate about autoplay. Because most of the services we use, they have on default autoplay on. And so whether you want it or not, a video starts playing. And I guess if you think about that autoplay debate and the question if you cannot unseen any picture you already saw, it would be interesting to think about that in the virtual reality realm, because everything that is graphic content or upsetting content could very much feel like you be a real eyewitness. So the immersion aspect of that technology would be right interesting for upsetting and graphic contents. So the choice, if you have such content, if you want to proceed, should be, of course, by the user. And that is, I guess, a recommendation which comes not from the paper of Madari and Metzinger, but I think we should add it to ethics of virtual reality. There's also a broader discussion about desensitizement. So if you are more in an immersive realm, if you have a real virtual reality, which much more feels like a virtual reality, would you be more, is it possible to desensitize people more than in other environments which are not that immersive? And it could also feel more intrusive, of course, if you see graphic content or upsetting content. So there's a rather interesting discussion for the future and has a lot of ethical dilemmata if you think about it. We have some solutions for that after the first autoplay debates. You may be remembering that news outlets started to put those pictures before videos, or sometimes pictures too. But I think those ideas just have a warning that there may be upsetting content ahead, should not be, it's not sufficient for virtual reality, because or maybe it is possible to have such a kind of warning for VR technology too, but it should be, I guess, much more explaining in a way so that you really can have an informed consent. Of course, if we talk about the ethics of VR, there's also the fact that especially the US Army is researching for more than 25 years about virtual realities, that it's of course about the question if you can lower the empathy for other human beings using those technologies. There is a discussion that's for a long time, but of course, the dual-use question in all ethical approaches should be addressed. And that is the suggestion of Madari and Metzinger. They say awareness of the problem of dual use or using a technology for something other than its original intention should be addressed. I guess you could have that for any technology, but seeing the history of VR development, it's much more important because the whole start of development and also the innovation of that VR technology comes from military research to start with. And of course, but you could say a lot more about the dual-use problem, but I guess it should be addressed, but not only in the military realm, but also if you invent a technology, basically, and others could use it different from your original intention, you should at least think about it. Madari and Metzinger also have, of course, different aspects of the privacy debate, which is basically, and I will remind you of that, debate about the dignity. So in the last month, I have the feeling that if you talk about privacy issues and technology, it is reduced in a way, and it should be connected again to questions of human dignity. And that is where the concept actually comes from. And so I think it's a good idea. They say adopting procedures that ensure a commercial virtual reality user's privacy is maintained. Of course. As I pointed out earlier, it's not just about the data they can collect through your communication or social interaction or transaction. It's also the data which can be measured from your body, actually, through sensors. And, of course, biometric data, meaning iris data, meaning also speech recognition and stuff like that. I found that very interesting that there was a little hype about the question of 3D models which could be implemented for dead persons, dead loved ones. So you have a kind of a virtual cemetery where you can walk and talk to, well, let's say your dead grandpa. And not only speak to him as one direction, but also to a conversation, yes. Also to a two-way conversation. And I find it very interesting that nobody in that hype about that virtual cemetery talked about privacy issues here. Because I think there, if you would go to such a virtual cemetery, you would, of course, have very intimate and private moments there. And if somebody with a commercial goal collects the data, there should always be a privacy debate. The last recommendation from Madari and Metzinger is about, it's privacy related, but it's about manipulating. And they say avoid significantly influence to consumer behavior, which I find very interesting because advertisement is also always about manipulation, and they address that in their recommendations. And they also speak a little bit about the so-called neuromarketing, which will be for new ways to influence your behavior and to address your needs and create needs. So since most of the users of the technology are basically consumers or see themselves as consumers, that manipulation aspect should be considered when you talk about the ethics of VR. There are some more which I don't want to talk about that much because time is running out. But of course, for a hacker community, I would like to integrate into the ethics debate the right to tinker, so that you are able and allowed, a license-wise, allowed to tinker with your technology and to control it in a very, well, in a factual way, and that you are not legally punished if you want to manipulate your own VR technology. I think that right to tinker should be in any ethics recommendation too. And also, of course, and that is a recommendation from Madari and Metzinger too, that you have to have more research. So if you bring that technology to $1 million market, a $1 billion market in the future, then you should also think about the research and how you, in what way that research is shaped. It shouldn't be only shaped for commercial interest, of course, but for questions of influence of human brains and stuff like that. So maybe in the end, we all know how the virtual realities will end up because we all see the movie like Matrix or, of course, the holodecks. And if you have the chance to see the older series of Star Trek where the holodeck is portrayed in many ways, you see that a lot of ethical dilemmata are addressed there. Not only that in the later Star Trek series, the people from that holodeck virtual reality are actually stepping out of their virtual worlds into the physical world. But also, if you think about it in the Star Trek universe, there's no real privacy debate or manipulation debate, because if you see this technology on the television screen, those issues are already addressed and somewhat solved. I find that very interesting if you take a look at the representation of holodecks and in general virtual worlds in the Star Trek universe, that those problems which Madari and Metzinger address are already solved. That's not a problem. Even though, of course, the technology is able to collect all kinds of data and manipulate, of course, persons too. So, I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope that the thinking about ethics in VR can be a start for a debate about how VR can be used ethically and responsibly, and that VR will not in the future be just another mechanism to increase corporate power over us. That would be my wish for that technology. Thank you very much.